yesterday's news.
Hello and welcome to Old News, the programme and podcast which looks at news stories of the day through the papers of yesterday. And, before I forget, a Happy New Year to one and all. Well, let's start with a bang, or with a comet to be exact. Comets have been back in the news, in Manx radio at least, in recent days, courtesy of our resident astronomer, my namesake Howard Parkin, talking about two comets, one of which, Comet Schaumasse, or Schaumasse, will be visible from the Isle of Man through a small pair of binoculars, I thought. So, comets, do they often feature in the news or in the papers in the Isle of Man? Surprisingly, more than you'd think, and much longer ago than you might think. I refer you to the Manx advertiser, that's Manx, M-A-N-K-S, which might give you a hint that it's of Tuesday, February the 8th, 1831. Talking about perhaps the most famous of comets, Halley's Comet, or the Comet of 1834. Mention was made, the article says, in the report of the Astronomical Society's last meeting of a communication by Mr. Lubcock on the orbit of this celebrated comet. The subject just now engrosses a great deal of the attention of our astronomers, and we will have no doubt the following, by Dr. Hartmann of Berlin, will be read with interest. There are few comets which are visible to the naked eye, and on this account the comet, whose return figures among the calculated memorabilia of the year 1834, is entitled to an early and special notice. Of the heavenly creations of its own class, wonderful writing again, it is this one it can be predicted with the greatest certainty, that it travels around the sun, and that we are accurately acquainted with the period of its revolution, facts which are the result of four several opportunities which the world has enjoyed of watching its course. Such are the considerations which justify and induce me to take a glance at its history. So far as modern observations reach, this comet was seen for the first time in the year 1465. Very modern, and it approached to a distance of 11,700,000 miles from the Sun on the 8th of June in that year. It came near the Earth and under very favourable circumstances, presenting itself with peculiar splendour and remarkable brilliancy, travelling with a tail which extended over a third portion of the firmament and affording a spectacle of far greater beauty than it has ever exhibited since those times. Wish we were there, don't we? Its next appearance was in 1531, and on the 25th day of August, it was at a distance of 11.6 million miles from the Sun. The period of its revolution was therefore ascertained to be 75 years, 2 months and 17 days. Its appearance differed greatly from that just described. Appian, who observed it, relates that it had no tail whatever, but was what is termed a bearded comet, its whole circumference being encircled by equal effulgence at every point. There's a good word, effulgence. And inasmuch as this halo had no defined edging, it appeared to be hairy or bearded. It may have had a tail, though, from the unfavourable circumstances which accompanied the comet's appearance on this occasion, it was not discernible by the eye. Calculating each of its revolutions at 75 years, the return of this comet might have been predicted for the year 1606 or 1607, and in fact it did return for the third time in 1607. It approached nearest to the Sun on the 26th of October, when it was 11.75 million miles distant from it. The period of its revolution had consequently been 76 years, 2 months and 1 day, 1 12-month longer than the preceding, whence it is obvious that its progress had been disturbed by some planet or other strange body. Well, who knows? But it keeps coming back. I think we have the time down to a fine art now. We go to the Mona's Herald of Saturday, July the 6th, just after Tynwald Day, 1861, the new comet. The comet is still attracting universal attention, and it is a splendid object at night. It doesn't say which comet this is. Astronomers agree that it much surpasses that of 1858 in magnitude. Such estimates its apparent size at double that of the late comet. At the darkest time of night, a shadow may be seen projected by it upon a white paper when its light is intercepted by a well-defined object. Mr. G.F. Chambers, writing from Uckfield, Sussex, considers it a return of the grand comet of 1856, which had been expected for some years. The Paris correspondent of the Globe says there is a positive row among Parisian astronomers about the comet that suddenly exhibited its tail over Mont Noir a few nights ago. Babinet declares that at last the long and overdue phenomenon, the comet of Charles V, recurring every 300 years, has now made its appearance. Mr. Astronomer Hind had given it days of grace which expired in 1860, but here it is at last. Leverrier tells Babinet that the rate of velocity is not that of the comet in question, to which Babinet replies that on nearing this planet of ours there is always some disarrangement in the rate of going. Besides, there has not been time to calculate exactly. This celestial vagrant has always been the harbinger of some misfortune. In 1264, it brought on the death of Pope Urban IV. In 1556, it frightened the Emperor Charles into abdication and a monastery. In July 975, it brought on the catastrophe of the Longtail, we shall say, Tower in the Rhine, in which the tyrant Archbishop of Mayence had taken refuge and was devoured by these vermin. Gallinani says, on Tuesday its distance from the pole was not more than 35 degrees, it having thus performed nearly 8 degrees northward in the course of 24 hours. It is composed, as usual, of a very brilliant nucleus, a luminous aureola of considerable breadth, a tuft on the side turned towards the sun, and a large tail in the opposite direction. I'm not 100% certain which comet that was. Perhaps Howard Parkin will put us all straight. Which comet was that which had appeared in 1861, it seems? Saturday, July the 2nd, 1881, in the Isle of Man Examiner. The comet. The comet, about which so much has been written and said of late, has been here during the last few nights in the northern part of the heavens. On Saturday and Monday, about midnight, it was very distinctly visible, the head being brilliant, the tail well defined, for a length of about 3 degrees. Sounds good, doesn't it? If we skip to the Times, Wednesday, May the 1st, 1889, a paper on comets, read before the Douglas branch of the Liverpool Astronomical Society on Monday, December the 3rd, 1888, by Mr. Thomas Kegg. Good Manx name. Of all the phenomena which the heavens present for our contemplation, says Mr. Denning, one of the most imposing is that of a large comet, as it spans the constellations with its wreath of flame and traverses the sky with a rapidity seldom to be witnessed. The unexpected apparition, so startling a visitor from the interstellar spaces, and the majestic aspect it assumes with increasing dimensions, are such as naturally to fill the mind of the unlearned with awe, and we can easily understand the superstitious dread with which these objects were regarded in bygone generations. The blazing star was viewed threatening the world with famine, plague, and war. From the earliest ages, it goes on, these visitants were regarded with an awe which has never attached itself to other heavenly bodies. It is recorded of Louis I of France that he was so much alarmed by the appearance of the comet of 837 that he felt it necessary to satisfy his mind and to appease the wrath of heaven by ordering the construction of a number of churches and monasteries, which his conscience told him he had hitherto neglected. The mind boggles, doesn't it? The Manx comet is the title of a piece in the Isle of Man Times of Saturday, February the 9th, 1895. Manx with an X this time. At the London Institute, Sir Robert Ball gave a very interesting lecture on comets, which was not the less appreciated because it was interspersed with plenty of humorous Hibernian touches. Comets had been scarce of late, he remarked, and astronomers had been particularly disgusted about it because they had recently got ready some marvellous apparatus for the reception of these erratic visitors and were naturally anxious to see how it worked. The next comet that turned up would have a pretty warm reception. Nothing of importance had been seen since 1882, and there was some fear that the dearth would continue until 1910, when, however, there was bound to be one. As it was too long to wait until that date, the lecturer said he must fall back on the 1882 comet and do his best to say something about that. It was discovered by a Mr. Tubbett in Australia in the southern skies, who immediately wrote off to England to tell us what was coming. However, the comet was travelling faster than the mails, so his warning was useless. Then there was a Dr. Gould at Cordova in South America, who sought to warn English astronomers by cable, but the telegraph clerks made a muddle of the message. Fortunately, the Emperor of Brazil had noticed the comet. Emperor of Brazil, who'd have known? And spending his money on a cable message with truly imperial lavishness, at length secured due notice for us in this quarter of the world. Taking warning by this, the astronomers of different countries had since established a sort of central comet exchange at Kiel and had devised a simple code to save the cost of long cable messages. Sir Robert Ball threw on the screen a fine photograph of the 1882 comet, calling special attention to the fact that the stars could easily be seen through the body of the visitor, notwithstanding that it was probably millions of miles in thickness. The photograph actually disclosed more detail than the human eye could see. The tail, as shown by the camera, was much longer than appeared to the eye, even through a telescope, a fact which proved the extreme value of the introduction of the photographic dry plate into the methods of astronomical observation. Some people fancied the tail of the comet trailed behind it, like that of a rocket, along the path of its motion. They must remember that there was no atmosphere around the comet to produce by its friction any such effect. As a matter of fact, the tail of a comet was always turned away from the sun and frequently was set crossways to the path of its motion. By means of a chart, the parabolic path of the 1882 comet around the sun was illustrated. In approaching the sun and turning around it, the speed of the comet would increase to an inconceivable rate. It would flash around the sun at 300 miles a second, and yet when it got into the most distant part of its orbit, it would crawl along at a pace which any well-regulated cab horse would despise. I'm not 100% certain that's true. I don't think it slows down to, 4 miles an hour? Unless Howard can tell us different. The Manxman, Saturday, February the 19th of 1898, refers to comets of that year. There are quite a bevy of these cosmical wanderers are timed to appear in our skies. The Pons-Winnaker comet should open the list by appearing in April after an absence of about 5.5 years. In May, the celebrated Encke comet is due. This comet has a period of only 3.25 years, and its frequent reappearance has been the means of astronomers discovering a great deal about comets and their wanderings through space. In June, we should have 2 of these cosmical visitors, Swift's and Wolf's comets, the former after an absence of 6 years, the latter a trifle longer. Temple's comet completes the visitors list by arriving in September. These comets are all regular visitors whose periods are so well known that their arrival may be timed almost to the hour. Others no doubt will arrive, but there will doubtless be casuals of whose antecedents nothing is known, and most of them such small fry as to only catch the attention of the most assiduous observers. There is one other comet whose visit falls due in November 1898 by this poor body went to pieces 50 years ago. This comet is known as Biela's and has not been seen since 1852, though it ought to have returned half a dozen times since then. It began to divide in 1846, and on its next and last appearance, 1,250,000 miles separated its parts. It was this comet which an astronomer predicted would approach within 20,000 miles of the Earth's path on its visit in 1832, and so accurately was this prediction made that its fulfillment was consummated within 12 hours of the time foretold. Well, that's pretty impressive, isn't it? The near approach of this comet to the Earth's orbit caused a considerable amount of consternation throughout the country, nor was the excitement greatly allayed by the assurance that the Earth would not reach that portion of its course which the comet approached so closely for a month after. However, nothing serious happened, and the public mind resumed its wonted calm. Although Biela's comet is not likely to appear, there will doubtless be seen about November the 26th or 27th a shower of meteors associated with the orbit of the comet. This shower regularly returns at periods coincident with the times at which the parent comet would have arrived had it maintained its coherency. Wonderful stuff. And then we'll skip right the way up to Friday, May the 17th, 1957 in the Isle of Man Examiner. A Comet Pictures Aid in Astronomy. Douglas Mount's photographs of the comet Arent Roland, one of which the Examiner reproduced on May the 3rd, have been sent on from the Royal Astronomical Society to an astronomer who is making a special study of the comet. The photographer, Mr. W.N.C. Salmond of Arthur Street, took photographs of the comet from a point in the Snaefell Mountain area and sent prints of them to the Royal Astronomical Society at the Royal Greenwich Observatory at Westminster Castle in Sussex. He received a reply from Mr. A. Hunter, Ph.D., Secretary of the Society. Mr. Hunter wrote, acknowledging the prints, "You are to be congratulated on these. Their chief interest lies in the structure shown in the tail, since for arriving at the position of the comet's head, longer focus cameras would be necessary. After referring to the date on which the photographs were taken, Mr Hunter says, "This evening was cloudy in the southeast of England, so it may be that they, the prints, will be a valuable supplement to the series secured by Dr R.L. Waterfield of Ascot, who's making a study of the comet. I have therefore taken the liberty of sending the prints to him. The elongation of the images caused by the Earth's rotation obscures the structure more and more the longer the exposure used, so it may be that your half-minute exposures will prove the most interesting." They're always interesting, aren't they? And fascinating to see. Maybe you'll be able to see the comet around at the moment if you've got a small pair of binoculars. I can't remember when Halley's is next due, but I don't think I'll be around because I saw the last one. So I'll be very old if I do. I don't know about Howard. Whichever way you look at it, comets are old news and current news, of course. Until next week, cheerio. You're gonna be yesterday's news.